One of these shows has been running for over 300 episodes, and most people have never heard of it. Another one was so popular that a side character from a single episode got her own spin-off, and it's now on its 4th season. If you've already burned through Miss Marple and Midsummer Murders and you're starving for something new, you're about to have the best few weeks of your life. Hugh Laurie had loved this Agatha Christie novel since he was a kid. The ending gave him chills when he first read it, and he'd been carrying it around in his head for decades. He was actually in talks with the Christie estate about a completely different project. They wanted him to act in an adaptation of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and Laurie basically said, "What if I did this other thing instead? What if I wrote it, directed it, and we made Why Didn't They Ask Evans?" They said yes. It's the first time Laurie had ever written and directed a TV drama. The story follows a vicar's son named Bobby Jones who finds a dying man at the bottom of a cliff in Wales. The man's last words are, "Why didn't they ask Evans?" And Bobby has no idea what that means. Neither does anyone else. So Bobby teams up with his childhood friend, a socialite named Lady Frankie Derwent, and they go off playing amateur detective through 1930s England. Laurie said he loved how it starts feeling like an adventure and then turns into something darker. It's a 3-part miniseries. Lucy Boynton is magnetic as Frankie. The whole thing is visually gorgeous. The first episode is genuinely great fun. Now, fair warning, the final episode feels rushed and the resolution is a bit underwhelming, but that's actually the source material's fault, not Laurie's. Christie wrote it in 1934 and the ending was always the weak link. But what you're getting here is a well-told story with an all-star cast having a great time. Diana Rigg. That's really all I need to say here, but I'll keep going. This was a BBC production from 1998, just 5 episodes total, a pilot, and 4 more. Rigg plays Mrs. Adela Bradley, a wealthy, thrice-divorced amateur detective in 1920s England. She's wicked smart and she knows it. The character in Gladys Mitchell's original novels is described as small, gnarled, and crocodilian. Diana Rigg is none of those things. Doesn't matter. People compared her performance to Jeremy Brett as Sherlock Holmes in terms of just completely owning a role. The writing isn't always as sharp as Rigg deserves. Some of the later episodes drag, but when Diana Rigg is on screen doing her thing, none of that matters. You're watching a master at work. BBC Daytime wanted a detective series for weekday afternoons. Something safe, something established, something low risk. They landed on Chesterton's Father Brown stories, a Catholic priest who solves murders through his understanding of human nature. They cast Mark Williams. You know him as Arthur Weasley from the Harry Potter films. They set it in the Cotswolds because the area had few modern buildings and was close to their production base in Birmingham. They figured it would run maybe 3 seasons. It's now on season 13, over 140 episodes. The early seasons are genuinely beloved. Great chemistry between the cast, sharp writing, gorgeous scenery, this warm, family-friendly tone that just works. The later seasons have divided people. There's cast changes, some weaker writing, but the show refuses to die. It just keeps getting renewed. And here's the really fun part. In Season 1, there's a single episode called The Bride of Christ. It features a crime-solving nun who rides a Vespa and has a PhD in forensic science. She's played by Lorna Watson. The character was so funny and Watson's performance was so good that the producers couldn't let it go. They'd planned to develop a spin-off about Sister Boniface after Father Brown ended, but Father Brown kept not ending. So eventually they just launched both shows at the same time. Sister Boniface lives at St. Vincent's Convent in a town called Great Slaughter. It's set in the early 1960s, and this character is absolutely ridiculous on paper. She's a former Bletchley Park codebreaker. She has a PhD in forensic science. She makes wine at the convent. She rides a Vespa with a sidecar, and she serves as scientific advisor to the local police. The show got commissioned right before the pandemic hit. COVID actually helped. The lockdowns gave the writers extra time to work on scripts. It's lighter than Father Brown. The mysteries are simpler. And in the first season, Sister Boniface sometimes feels sidelined in her own show because the police officers eat up a lot of screen time. But Lorna Watson has so much charm that it holds together anyway. And by season 2, they figured out the balance. Watson's character got more personality, the plots got livelier. It's now been renewed through a 4th series. 2 Australian producers named Deb Cox and Fiona Eager were looking for a crime novel to adapt, and they were frustrated. Everything they found was dark. Serial killers, psychotic murderers, grim stuff. They didn't want to make that. Then they found Carrie Greenwood's Frankie Fisher books, and something weird jumped out at them. The fan base for these novels ranged from teenagers to people in their 70s. They wanted to know what could possibly appeal to both a 16-year-old and a 70-year-old. So they made Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries. Essie Davis plays Frankie Fisher, a glamorous private detective in late 1920s Melbourne. She carries a pearl-handled pistol. She wears trousers, takes lovers whenever she wants, and solves murders with this unshakable confidence. The show has an 8.3 on IMDb, one of the highest rated in its genre. Essie Davis is magnetic. The chemistry between her and Nathan Page, who plays Detective Inspector Jack Robinson, became the emotional spine of the whole series. The costumes alone are worth watching for. 3 seasons, 34 episodes. Season 3's writing isn't quite as strong, but the performances and production quality never drop. James Runcie grew up as the son of the Archbishop of Canterbury. His father held the highest position in the Church of England from 1980 to 1991. So when Runcie decided to write mystery stories about a complicated, flawed vicar who keeps stumbling into murder investigations, he wasn't guessing. He'd spent his whole childhood inside that world. Those stories became Grantchester. It's set in a small Cambridgeshire village in the 1950s, and it follows a young vicar partnered up with a gruff police detective. The vicar is attractive and troubled and full of doubts about his faith. The show's been running for 10 seasons now, with an 11th and final one scheduled for 2027. James Norton played the original vicar, and he committed fully to the tortured, handsome clergyman thing. Then Andrew Scott showed up as a hot priest in Fleabag. Then Father Brown somehow developed a fan base. And suddenly, British television had this whole hot vicar phenomenon happening, and Grantchester is where it started. Derek Jacobi plays a 12th century Benedictine monk who solves murders. That alone would be enough. But Brother Cadfael wasn't always a monk. Before he took his vows, he fought in the Crusades and sailed the world. Now he lives quietly at Shrewsbury Abbey, grows herbs in his garden, and uses everything he learned out there to figure out who's killing people. The show only ran for 13 episodes across 4 series, but each one is 75 minutes long, and the production is gorgeous. It feels authentic in a way most medieval stuff doesn't even attempt. If you watch these episodes now, you'll catch actors before they got famous. Sean Pertwee shows up. Toby Jones, Johnny Lee Miller. There's an episode with Hugh Bonneville credited as Richard because nobody knew who Hugh Bonneville was yet. It's like a time capsule of British talent. Anthony Horowitz first had this idea back when he was working on Midsummer Murders in 1997. He wanted to write something that wasn't just a murder mystery, but was also about murder mysteries. A story that examined the whole genre while still being a proper whodunit. It took him almost 20 years to actually write the novel, and then adapting it for television took another 2 years and about half a dozen drafts. The problem was structure. In the book, the 2 mysteries happen one after the other. For the show, Horowitz wanted them running at the same time. Leslie Manville plays a London book editor named Susan Ryland. Her most successful author writes a detective series set in the 1950s featuring a detective called Atticus Pund. Then the author hands in his latest manuscript with the final chapter missing and promptly turns up dead. So now Susan has to solve the murder in the book to figure out if it connects to the real murder of the guy who wrote it. The show cuts back and forth between the 2 timelines, and some of the actors appear in both, playing different roles. 19 seasons, over 300 episodes. It started in 2008 and it's still going. The show is set in Toronto in the 1890s, and it follows a police detective named William Murdoch who keeps inventing forensic techniques 50 years before anyone else thought of them. Fingerprinting, trace evidence, early lie detectors. He's basically doing modern crime scene investigation in the Victorian era. The first 10 or 11 seasons are where most fans say the show is at its best. After that, opinions split. Some people think the writing declined. Others stuck with it because after that many episodes, the characters feel like people you actually know. 300 episodes will do that. The same production company that makes Murdoch Mysteries decided to do a companion show. Same approach, but set 16 years later with an all-female lead cast. Lauren Lee Smith plays Frankie Drake, Toronto's first female private detective working cases in the 1920s. The show ran for 4 seasons before it got canceled in 2021, and the whole time, it had one problem it could never escape. Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries had come out a few years earlier, also set in the 1920s, also featuring a glamorous female detective, and Frankie Fisher became this iconic character. So naturally, every review of Frankie Drake mentioned Miss Fisher, and every comparison went the same way. Frankie Drake was fun, but it wasn't Miss Fisher. The costumes were great, the cast was appealing, but the main character couldn't match Frankie Fisher for charisma. That's a tough spot to be in. You're not a bad show, but you came out after a great one in the same genre. People can't help comparing, and once that comparison gets into their heads, you're always going to fall short.